Good afternoon, everyone. Andy Jacob here with the DotCom Magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series. What a show today. I've been able to book on the show someone I've been waiting for a couple months to come on and talk about corporate culture, to talk about the employee experience in strategy. He is who I call the king of culture. He is really a world-renowned keynote speaker. He is the author of Culture Hacker. He's a television personality, and he's a business consultant who has worked with global Fortune 500 leaders. I'm so excited to have Mr. Shane Green on the show today, the founder and CEO of SGEi. And he is remarkable. We're going to have a great conversation. Shane, welcome to the show.
Andy, awesome to catch up finally. This will be good. I love the energy.
This is super awesome, Shane. As you know, like we always do, let's start the show by pulling the lens back to 30,000 feet and tell us about SGEi.
Well, I came out of the hospitality business, worked with Ritz-Carlton for a number of years, and went into the customer experience space. So there's been a few iterations of what we've been doing, but we really started to focus initially on service, supervisor, manager training, moved into the customer experience space, which we found interesting because we were mapping customer journeys, identifying key moments, and working out how to elevate that. Did some really cool work with the NBA, BMW on how to sell a car. All of these things led us to a point to realize that when it comes to most companies in trying to elevate customer experience, they're missing out on one important part, the people strategy. And so we started to really shift our work to understanding, well, why weren't organizations doing a better job? They have HR teams, which are supposedly responsible for that, but they fell short. So we started to really approach culture from an operational, a business, and understand, well, why is this thing the most important driver? And what we've started to understand through our employee experience work is that culture is an outcome of the employee experience, very similar to brand is the outcome of the customer experience. So we've been spending the last kind of 5 to 10 years mapping the key moments in an employee's journey, understanding what mechanisms turn them on, turn them off, make them feel good, don't make them feel good. We wrote Culture Hacker to kind of highlight those mechanisms, particularly to small businesses, startups. And then we really focus in recently on manager habits. What are the things that they're doing each day that can really make the difference in the employee's experience? So that's the quick 30,000 feet view of what we're doing right now.
I love it, Shane. I tell you, this is remarkable. This is a great way that you're looking at the employee mindsets at SGEi. It's really remarkable. It's sort of turning it inside out in a very important way. So let's talk about that, Shane. When it comes to employee mindsets, when you've spoken and have trained so many of the Fortune 500 leaders on their customer experience and their organizational culture, what's the big thing? What's the big 800-pound gorilla in the room that companies need to think about with regard to their employee mindsets?
Yeah, listen, I got the best sort of training for that at Ritz-Carlton. I remember every day we used to talk, there's a hospitality axiom, which is a truth that says an employee with a great attitude gives great service, an employee with a bad attitude, bad service. Really simple, really basic. And listen, we've all been customers. We know what it's like to get that person who has that really bad attitude. So what that started to get us to think about was this idea of how does attitude play in? Listen, in case you haven't worked out, you cannot make your employees do something they don't want to do. And what we started to shift in our thinking was to understand two big things. First of all, culture is just the collective hearts and minds or attitudes of a group of people. So it's the collective, which means how does most people feel most of the time? You know, everyone has a bad day. Their attitude is not always on. But for the most part, most time, does your team feel good? So that's the first piece. The second thing is the part that leaders play. Leaders, for me, inspire hearts and minds to make people want. And that's the key here. You can't kind of bang someone over the head, jump up and down, yell and scream like we did in the good old days and think that that's going to work. What we have to do, particularly with younger people, is we have to make them want to perform. So the art of that is how do you make people want? And this is where the idea between leadership and management really comes into play. Leadership and management are two different things. They're two sides of the same coin. A manager is responsible for efficiency, accuracy, safety, making sure that the operation goes. Very important. Leadership, though, focuses on people, so that's more hearts and minds. What we know in most organizations today is a manager a person gets promoted to a manager because they were good in the operation. They were very efficient. They were good at tasks. They were very sort of, thing-driven, operational-driven. What we don't know is if they're people-driven. And this is where we sort of see the mistake being made. People get promoted into manager roles really quickly, and then all of a sudden they're responsible for people. They're responsible for hearts and minds. Well, I don't know about you, but again, that takes a lot to understand in some ways the behavioral psychology of making people want. So I see a lot of managers being promoted, supervisors who are just not equipped to be prepared to take care of people. One of the stupidest things we do in business is we don't give people leadership development skills until they have a title. And one of the things we've been talking about a lot is get your people set up a lot earlier to be equipped with dealing with the attitude. That will help them build the type of culture that your company is looking for.
I love it, Shane. That is really remarkable insight. Sometimes the most important things get missed, and this is so important for companies to look at this. It's so important for CEOs and C-level executives to look for this type of an opportunity within their company. Reach out to Shane at SGEi. He's going to get you straight. There's no doubt about it. So when we talk about these managers that get promoted and they go to management, Shane, but then they don't really have the leadership chops. They don't really have that understanding. They understand the nuts and bolts of the business, but they don't have the leadership capabilities. How does SGEi come in and sort of fix that for these companies to make their employee retention better and to make the organizational performance that much more enhanced?
Well, we got to start at the manager level. The first thing is so many people have this idea that to be a leader, you've got to be born with some sort of magic wand or apple or whatever it is. Yeah, and it goes back. You've heard the debate many times. Are leaders born or made? I've said from day dot, anybody can be a leader. In fact, you don't need a title to be a leader. Why? Leaders inspire hearts and minds. Think about how many people we come across in our daily lives that just make us feel good, that inspire us to want. Well, guess what? That's leadership. So what we want to be able to do is to take away the stigma that for a manager, being a leader is difficult or impossible. First thing. Second thing that we've got to get people to understand is that to be a leader, you need a lot of energy. It's more emotionally driven. So that's another thing that a lot of managers really come up against. It's tough being a manager. You've got so many responsibilities, and then all of a sudden you got to take care of people. Well, again, if you're a parent and you've gone through that sort of process, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It's draining. So what we've done, and this is the cool stuff I think from our research the last few years, is we've said is like, listen, being a manager and leader, it's two sides of the same coin. What you want to be able to do is know when to turn on that leadership, which for me is just emotional intent. When do you become more emotionally available, transparent, empathetic with your team? Now, what gets most managers is they think they always have to be on. That's not the case. We've mapped the employee journey. There's about 37 moments, key moments from recruitment all the way through every year that impacts how an employee feels. We've identified 8 of them in the employee's day. Now, what this tells us and what we've mapped is that for about 12 to 15 minutes a day, that's all it is, managers need to turn it on. They need to be emotionally available. So what we're doing is helping these managers who have got so many responsibilities, who are extremely busy, to be smarter with their energy and effort. And we're helping them be aware of, hey, here's a moment, don't miss it. It's like as simple as the start of the day. One of the key moments for an employee is when they walk into work is in their mind, they says, are they happy that I'm here? Well, guess what? All you have to do is say, good morning, Andy. It's great to see you, buddy. And guess what? You suddenly feel good and it gets the day off. That took all of 2 seconds. And if I'm strategic as a manager, I make sure that I schedule time for about 20 minutes in the morning when everyone's coming into work or everyone's there. I park myself where people are coming through or I know I'll get to see a lot of them. And in that 20 minutes, I might touch hundreds of my employees coming through the door and give them the first moment of the day. So again, being strategic and smarter, what we're doing is teaching managers to use their time, emotional energy smarter, and then giving them the skills and the habits. And it's amazing, Andy. They go, really? That's what it takes? And all of a sudden, we're giving people the confidence and comfort that they can be a leader, this aspirational kind of, title that's been sitting out there for so long. We bring it down to earth, we land the thing, and man, all of a sudden, we're seeing culture, that outcome we talked about, starting to improve.
I love it, Shane. I mean, that's a great idea. Just 15 minutes a day, you pick and choose the times. You start the day, maybe you're at the entrance and you're giving everybody a fist bump or an elbow bump with COVID, or you're just, saying hello to them, or, getting them going on the right path. And it's so simple, but it's something that's so impactful. Now, Shane, let's talk about habits, because I know that habits are super important. I know that you're real big on habits and you're real big on teaching that, and you're an expert on, and as you know, I call you the king of culture. How important are these habits to teach people to get into the right groove and get into the right momentum every single day?
Yeah, listen, huge. Listen, we're big habit kings. The whole thing, it's 30 days to break a habit, 30 days to create a new one. What we find is that with many managers, and this is what you got to be aware of, people have bad habits. They're not used to saying good morning to everybody. They come in, head down, they're kind of like come in, do their job, and all of a sudden they're given a manager's title. Well, now they've got to go, all right, they still walk in with a coffee with their head down, and they don't realize they missed that moment. So what we try to do, the first thing is about self-awareness, and it comes back to this whole emotional intelligence idea. I know sort of people throw that around and can get scared, but the first two elements of emotional intelligence is to be self-aware and then to be socially aware. So first of all, it starts with you, and we bring awareness to managers, and particularly with executives. We coach them a lot on, are you aware of how your emotions are impacting other people? You having a grumpy moment, coming in because something happened at home, we get it, we understand, but guess what? That 100 employees that you walk past in the morning don't, and they don't care. So you have to kind of suck it up. You have to put on the big boy pants. And when you walk through the door, know that there are certain things. That walk from your car to your office, that 10, 15 minutes sets the tone for the whole company that day. Get into your office, shut the door, put your head down, have your cup of coffee, and get back in a grumpy mode. I get it. But you have to start to be strategic. And this is the piece that I really kind of gets me sort of going, is that everybody can do this, but you choose not to. And this is what habits is all about. You make a choice. And listen, I get it. You're going to have those off days. I get it. And when we've mapped this, when I say 8 moments a day, if you don't get all people with 8 moments, that's okay. But I go back to culture. For the most part, on most days, you're good about walking in and high-fiving and fist bumping everybody. That's cool. It sets the tone. So when you start to be aware of it, you start to realize these moments. You go, oh, shoot, remember Shane told me I should do this in the morning? And so what happens if you start to do it enough times, it becomes the habit. When it becomes a habit, you don't need to schedule the first 20 minutes of your day because it's something that you naturally do. So again, creating the habit starts with that self-awareness. And again, being aware of moments, I think, is a key part that all managers need to be taught.
I love it, Shane. Be aware of the moments, even driving in the morning, do you park your car straight, or is it crooked? Or is your car sticking out a little bit? And then when you get out of the car, are you slouched over when you walk in, or are you not waiting for cars to pass and being sort of a non-polite type of a person on the way into the shop or into the business? All those things add up, right, Shane?
Andy, listen, let's remember the most watched sport in the world is boss watching. Everyone watches the boss, okay? I want everybody to remember that. It is boss watching. Everyone partakes in it. It is the sport. Think about it. All the employees, they hang out in the morning. They go, how's the boss feeling today? Can I talk to them? Can I check in with them? Boss watching. Remember, they're watching all the time. And it's not just the words you say. It's those body cues. It's the facial expressions. And that's why understanding the moments, you don't have to be on all the time, but in those key moments, start of the day, end of the day. And the other big one is schedule time throughout the day when you can go and interact with your team and do a little recognition, give a little feedback, give some high fives. All of these things matter, but you schedule it. and you make sure that you do it what I call in your times when you're turned on and you're fired up and you're ready to go, because that emotional energy carries, your passion carries, and that's what leadership really is all about. Your ability to inspire these hearts and minds, and it takes just a little bit of time every day.
I love it, Shane. And obviously people watching the show, you can start imagining what happens when you reach out to Shane and you bring in SGEi. What could happen to the entire fabric of your business? Because if you have all of these moments happening throughout the entire operation, what happens is not only do your employees feel better, but you have employee retention because they're going to want to stay there. And we know how much it costs to hire a new employee. Your organizational performance goes through the roof. And then what happens because of all of that as a result is that your clients or your customers who buy your product or service, they love you even more than what they already did before. They tell 10 people about you, and all of a sudden you have this great hockey stick growth in your business thanks to Shane Green and SGEi. Now, Shane, let's talk a little bit about what maybe the 800-pound gorilla is in the room right now, which is the differential between younger people as employees in their 20s and 30s versus older people in their 40s and 50s. We know that there's a large portion of people that are getting toward 40 years old in the C-level executive suites right now. Do you see a difference between the different age groups, or is there no difference at all and you just have to train them up?
Okay, so let's get all this ageism shit out of the way. Please excuse my English, but I'm sick of hearing the argument. We have spent so much time complaining about millennials, we've actually not stopped and worked out how to work with them best. The reality is our millennials are our C-suiters right now, and yet we still complain about them. It's amazing that they still get brought up in every conversation, that they're not as loyal, they're not as ethical and all this. Here's the deal. Here's where it comes back to culture. What happened is that for many, many years, myself, boomers, all of those people that get thrown out there, we had these rules by which we work. We were really good. It was indoctrinated into us that it was just really, it wasn't something that had to be sort of read out loud. Now what happened is we started years ago, the millennials came in, and then now the Zs are coming in. What they're saying is, listen, we don't abide by the fact that just because you did it that way, that we have to do it that way. So they have gone about and said, all right, let's work out how to work smarter. Let's get our technology working for us. Now, what happens is when someone young comes into an organization, the first thing they look for is, what are the rules of the organization? And they specifically look for things like values and mission and purpose. And when an organization doesn't have that, which means they don't have rules on how work gets done. And Andy, this is a big piece. Performance is defined traditionally of what did you deliver to me lately? We all got, sort of our raises based on who delivered the most. Today's world, social media, very transparent. Everybody's going to talk about you. What we're seeing is that customers and employees are talking about how they are treated. So performance has kind of added this axis now. Not only is it what you deliver, but it's how you deliver it. So remember that. Younger people are now really honing in on, like, do I really want to work 20 hours a day to deliver this and kill myself and not have a life? Nope, that's not how I want to get things done. So they have started to really think and create rules about how work gets done. So go back to your organization. If you don't have your values in place, if you don't have the framework on how business gets done, these younger people come in and say, hey, there's no rules, I'm going to make up my own. Well, guess what? They come in, they work quicker, they work faster, they use their tech, and they piss all the old people like you and I off, and they go, what the heck? And what do? We sit around and complain all day long. What a waste of our time. I can tell you plain and simple. What we've got to do is work out how to inspire. And again, it goes back to this idea of hearts and minds. We have to understand, and this is something that for our C-suites, our executives, ladies and gentlemen out there, when it comes to change is not for everybody else. So many times I'm in an organization, they go, well, we've got to change these young people. We've got to change our frontline workers. I'm like, you ain't going to change them. They are who they are. We have to evolve with them. And our evolution is, how do we keep inspiring them? How do we get them excited? That's the journey that we go on. And in here, let me throw this number at you, Andy, because we've talked about these moments. Let's talk about the other two M's. I talk about moments, mechanisms, and managers. Mechanisms are things like your recruitment, your onboarding, your orientation, your recognition, training, communication. We're going to spend $300 billion this year. $300 billion just this year alone on all those mechanisms. And I walk into organizations, and the biggest thing I see is that they're spending all this money with no strategy. They're not thinking about the moments, and they're not listening to their employees, those younger employees, about what they want and what they need. Therefore, they spend huge amounts of money with very little return. So a big part of what we do is we help them understand moments, but most importantly, it's create emotional intent in your mechanisms that fits your brand, that gets the type of people that you need and your customers want to see to be successful, because all businesses are created differently. So we get the mechanisms working, then we put these manager leadership habits on top of it, and that defines your culture. Culture, I would argue today, is the most defining and unique element of your business. You can be in the same industry, doing the same products, but guess what? The one thing that can't be replicated, if you're really damn good at it, is the people that are working for you today. Unless they're working at multiple sites and multiple jobs, they are yours. You take care of them. Doesn't matter what their age, you work out to inspire. The only challenge that we have right now is we've got 4 generations in the workplace, so we have to be broader and better at understanding the inspiration. But every bit of research we've done, everything I see out there, people still want the same stuff, Andy. They want to be respected. They want to be recognized. They want to be talked to properly. Let's understand we're all human beings out there. A little human kindness is really what we all want.
I love it, Shane. It's filled with a lot of compassion and a lot of kindness. It's very, very beautiful. Shane, let's turn the page just a little bit and talk to the younger entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs that are about to engage with a startup. And you're an expert on sort of starting a business the right way with the right culture from the beginning. And a lot of founders, they don't think about that. They're thinking about their technology, or they're thinking about this or fundraising or that. They're not thinking about the culture, which really could be the thing that separates them and their success from a company that is not successful. So let's talk about the keys of starting a business and how to get that culture right from the beginning.
Listen, I can tell you I have started and I have failed at a number of businesses. I've been there, I've done that, I get it. Listen, when you start up a company, it's all about product, as you said. What we're seeing now, which honestly I get most excited for, and for all my entrepreneurs out there, remember this: when you sit with your first round of investors, they are going to talk product, but they're going to talk about culture as well. They're going to ask you about your rules of the sandbox. Unfortunately, there's been too many situations recently. I throw Uber out as a big example. Still a fantastic organization, successful, but lost billions because it had the wrong culture at the right time. My advice to you, and please remember this, we are in a socially media-driven world. We are in a very transparent world. How you operate as an entrepreneur is going to be noticed. You have to understand that when you start out, I get it, university, when we're young in our 20s, we do all the silliest things in the world. Unfortunately, we're getting called out on it these days. Remember that. So set yourself on your own set of rules, create some values on which you will live by, and that you will make those first decisions. I believe the most important decision you're going to make in your company is the first person you're going to hire. Generally, probably the sales and marketing person. Generally, it's going to be some of those senior people. Make sure that they have a value system that fits with today's modern world. It is about respect. It's about work ethic. It's about how we treat people. This old school madman bullshit world that people still think might exist out there, it's not there anymore. So make sure you're focused on what you do and the product you're bringing to market, very important. But I can tell you, I work with a lot of startups. I guide them. I say, hey, set some really simple rules. I'm not talking about creating statements and big kind of complicated systems. I'm saying have a North Star that performance is defined by what I'm going to bring to market and how I bring to market. And my how has to be defined by my value system, and that value system in the small sort of, key group of people needs to be very strong and be very much agreed upon. And then the piece that I talk a lot about is that first few people that are coming into the company as an entrepreneur, please make sure you have open communication, transparency, and that you don't bring in a bunch of people that are going to say yes all the time, meaning get as diverse a group as possible. That diversity in your startup team will create great things. It means that you'll start to really embellish and see all the opportunities out there. It will also represent your company that there is no one way of doing things or one way of treating people. So diversity, inclusion, I know it's a lot out there, but again, just as an entrepreneur, don't be afraid of getting people that tell you that you're stupid, that something sucks, because quite honestly, that's the thing that we need most.
Shane, I love it so much. And we speak about this all the time. If you surround yourself with yes men and yes women, if you will, and all they say is yes, 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 you're not going to have an opportunity to grow because you're not getting a diversified question and answer opportunity from people that look at the world through a different viewpoint, which is what all companies need right now. So thank you so much, Shane, for bringing that up. Shane, I know you've only cut out a certain amount of time. I know that you're even doing keynote speaking on Zoom and helping so many companies, and of course, helping global Fortune 500 leaders as well as startup companies at SGEi. Is absolutely remarkable to have you on the show. With the few minutes we have left, I want to talk to the younger entrepreneurs. I want to talk to the young men and women that aren't quite sure how to deal with a pothole in the road. They're not sure. They get a roadblock and they're maybe a little freaked out. They don't know what to do about that roadblock, and they're looking for some advice. They don't know what they should do. They start getting a little apprehensive, maybe unsure of themselves a little bit. Maybe you could give them some of your famous Shane Green, King of Culture advice, and that would be very, very helpful for the younger entrepreneurs watching the show.
All right, guys, ladies and gentlemen, please remember this. You don't know it all. It's the most fundamental thing I can tell you. You don't know it all. And you are going to hit roadblocks. You are going to come up against things that tell you that you shouldn't do this, you don't want to do this. The one thing, a piece of advice, and I go back to, is like, make sure you have your board of advisors close by. This is not an official board. This is a support team. Those people close in your life. But also go out and get a mentor. Get someone who maybe have seen that, done that, who has a very different perspective, who can tell you that what you're doing maybe isn't right. But the most important thing is, like, don't get caught up. Grandiosity, and believe me, I've done it. I've been this entrepreneur. The grandiosity of thinking I know it all and that nobody can tell me anything is the surefire success of failure. Curiosity, for me, I think, is one of the most important values. Listen, we've gone through this pandemic. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on in the world. If I ever meet a business person who tells me they know what's going on right now, I call BS right out of the gate. It's not true. The number one thing that I guide young people on, or any entrepreneur, is, you know what, be curious. Ask lots of questions. Ask your customers, ask your employees, ask your parents, ask whatever, but keep asking questions, because again, that information that will come back will continue. As an entrepreneur, it's about sparking these ideas. It's about listening to all the perspectives and ideas that can be out there. And what will happen is that because you're so damn smart, with all these sort of advice, you will start to work out how to overcome that pothole. You'll start to work out how to think differently, because that's how you are wired. So the worst thing we can do is shut ourselves off in our basement, is kind of cut ourselves off from the world and try to think that we are the only ones that can work this out and push through it. I promise you, I've been through so many industries, so many companies. The reality is 95% of everything we're doing, it's kind of all the same. You know, we have these tweaks on products. We might have a new technology to market that gives us a 6-month advantage. But the reality at the end of the day, what will make you stand out is the people you surround yourself with, the type of culture that you create of how I'm going to deliver my product to market. And believe me that in today's world, and this is where we're seeing some cool companies, how they're doing it, giving back to the community, giving back to charities, connecting their products to worthy causes, whether it's climate change or anything else that's going on in our world right now, how they're approaching it, and by making a difference in other ways, is how you're standing out. And every conversation, focus group I have with a younger generation, and I'm talking people that aren't even in the workforce, we're talking to high school students, college students, the companies that they want to work for are the ones that are making a difference in this world. So how you do business matters. In fact, we're seeing companies started just now on, it only matters how we do business, not actually what we do.
I love it, Shane. Unbelievable. For all the people that reached out to me and said, hey, you have to get Shane on the show. Now you can see why so many people wanted him to become a member of the Entrepreneur Spotlight Series roster. He's the king of culture. There's There's literally so much going on with what he's doing to improve habits and improve the customer experience. And of course, it improves employee retention and organizational performance. It's going to increase your ROI just by making sure that your culture is right. And most likely, you can't do it on your own, which is why you want to bring someone like Shane in at SGEi to sort of help you out. And it just makes all the sense in the world, whether you're a Fortune 500 company, an Inc. 500 company, or a startup. You want to do it right, because every additional minute of this type of culture that goes on in your company gives you an additional opportunity to become great and even greater than what your company already is today. So Shane, I want to thank you so much for slicing the time today. You're an absolute delight. Thank you for coming on the .com Magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series.
Cheers, Andy. It was an awesome conversation as always, man. Cheers.